Welcome in to Think Fast. This week, we're going to take on one of society's sacred cows, or maybe I should say sacred dogs or sacred cats. We live in a time where the value of pets has really reached a level that we're going to discuss. Maybe has gone a little bit too far. Maybe something that Christians should think about how we talk about this. You hear these terms, fur babies. They're a part of our family, and there's a biblical case for a love for dogs and animals, and an understandable view on the importance of them. But on the other hand, I think it signifies, and we're going to get to in a minute why it matters so much, what it signifies about us as a culture that we have elevated animals, elevated pets to the level that we have. We understand, calling them fur babies, treating them kind of as our kids and grandkids. There's certainly an understandable level of that in a culture where there's a lot of singleness. There's a lot of Christian people who are just not able to find somebody. We did a podcast episode, Think Deeper, a few weeks ago on that very topic. And so, sometimes for that loneliness, that's helpful companionship to have a dog, a cat, a pet of some kind. For couples that struggle with infertility, having a pet in their life just gives them someone to a being, a creature to care for. And so there's those positives that we don't want to dismiss. And I think, as I said, the Bible illustrates some of that. I think of the three of us, Joe is the only current pet owner, correct?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Our dog is his name is Denver. We were gone for like the entire month. First off, he's like the smartest dog I've ever had. He's a border collie, and he's smarter than me. But we were gone for 5 weeks, I think, and came back. And man, just I love dogs. Like he just treats you like nothing ever happened and jumps up in your arms and snuggles with you. And so dogs are great. We know from Genesis 1, I think when, in the creation, all things were good. They were very good, right? And that includes animals. Animals are good. I think they are for a purpose and they're made for us. They're a good thing. Proverbs 12, verse 10 says, "A righteous man has regard for the life of his animal, but even the compassion of the wicked is cruel." It's okay to care about your animal. It's okay to care about your dog, your cat. Cat is maybe no.
We're not
Just kidding. I'm
cat
not a big
people
cat.
here.
I'm
Yeah.
not a big cat guy, but so I'm a big dog guy. We've always had dogs in the family. I love dogs. At the same time, I think there's some validity to what you're saying, Jack. But I'm going to throw it to you, Will. Why does this matter? I think you had made the comment off air. We're just going to sound like a bunch of old men, screaming at the clouds. People go, "What's the big deal here with fur babies? What's the big deal?" Like we're not trying to say, "Hey, dogs and cats are horrible." I clearly have them. I love them, but it's this elevation I think that is so dangerous. Why is that, Will?
Well, right. And it's not just the elevation. It's that at the same time as we're elevating our pets, what is our society at large doing with, the value of human life in general? They're lowering it. And so we've gotten to this point where we live in a society that elevates pets and animals and is, again, at the same time lowering unborn children. You got at the other end of the spectrum with the elderly. We live in a society that most certainly doesn't respect and care for the elderly. But obviously with Roe v. Wade being in the news over the last year, this is something that's really been on our minds a lot, is because you get on social media, and again, there's nothing wrong with posting about how much you love your pet or anything like that, but it's almost as if it's been ingrained into us that because we've lived under abortion so long, human life is not valued that much. And so again, it's not necessarily that we're elevating it. It's the problem. It's that we're inconsistent. We're elevating the life of our dog and talking about dog mom and all these pictures on social media, while at the same time, it's not just that we devalue human life when it comes to Roe v. Wade. Think about how we talk about kids. And I know Jack's going to get into this here in just a minute, but how do we talk about kids? Can't wait for them to get back to school. Oh my goodness, they're just driving me crazy. I'm going to pull my hair out. We talk about kids in such a negative fashion in so many ways. You don't ever hear anybody talk about their pets that way, right? For the most part, right? And
Look
so
at the
to me,
videos on
that's the main issue. Go ahead.
Look at the videos on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever, where it's these joke videos where the dog has completely ripped the house. Oh, who did this? And it's like,
Right.
what? Like that's your
Right.
reaction? If the dog did that, like he'd be at the pound, man. I'm sorry, but if he
So
ripped up my entire house, we don't do that with the kids. If the kids do it, it's like we have flipped out videos.
Right.
Dog
It's
does it's like,
inconsistency.
oh,
we'll get to the
right.
treatment of the different treatment and how that manifests here in a minute. On the value thing, there's always been the thing said about if you crush a bald eagle's egg, it's prison time. and yet abortion is largely legal.
Right. Right.
We've also got, I looked up a few studies on this. One said 40% of people said they would save their dog over stranger. If, there's a bus hurtling towards them and you can only shove one out of the way, that scenario, 40% said they would save their dog over a human. Another one where they fabricated a news story in which either a puppy, an adult dog, a human baby, or a human adult were beaten with a baseball bat and badly injured, and had people score their emotional reaction, their anger, their sadness, their shock. The baby, thankfully, ranked at the top of that would be the worst thing that people would reacted the worst to that story. But it was only a hair ahead of a puppy and a hair ahead of an adult dog. The adult human came in last place. We would rather see an adult human beaten with a baseball bat or read about that than a dog. And so things like that, they've kind of sought out, where do we stand on this? Where do we as a society? And those things show it. But the one that when it comes to valuing and putting our stock in our pets, that shocked me the most was it said 40% of married women in this study got more emotional support from their dog than they did from their husbands or from their kids. And I think that's one of the things where this is happening with all this, is we turn towards our creatures. And again, we're kind of blending the 2 points here, so I'll bring it in. The next one is the treatment issue. We live in a society where you see things, wedding invitations now, kids are not allowed. But then you go, man, the last few times I've been to the store, there's been someone there with a dog in the grocery store, in the hardware store. Dogs are everywhere, and yet we're more and more becoming a place, hey, keep your kid out of here, keep your kid quiet. We don't want your kid around. Even churches, like, hey, there's been those horror stories of churches kind of giving parents the business, hey, your kid's crying, get them out of here into the nursery and take them to the kids class because they're not welcome in this adult thing. People are advocating for flights that are kid free and things like that. But dogs are allowed everywhere. You can get your dog a seat on the plane next to you. And so the treatment is what's coming out of that. And it's, again, shows it's the manifestation of the value we're placing.
Right.
Well, look, dogs they can be problems. They can bark. They can do things like that. But kids are tough. Kids are hard. And we go for the easiest lifestyle possible. That's really what our culture has elevated above everything. And what they pursue and what they desire is just an ease of lifestyle. So even look at the architecture. Like, I don't want to get off on this, but even look at the architecture and some of the things that we're doing, creating these almost like commune type situations where we're building apartments and an entire world into a city block where you don't have to go anywhere. Like, it's all for ease and comfort, and dogs fit perfectly into that. You can have your little lap dog and you can take them on the plane, and it's great. The kid is screaming. If you've ever been a parent with a kid on a plane, man, it's rough. It's really, really difficult. Rough, no pun intended. It's really difficult. To bring kids on a plane. And so we want whatever's easiest in this culture. And I think we're doing ourselves a grave disservice.
The marriage thing is, your husband, you really got to work, but your dog's always going to be happy when you come home to see him. With the husband, maybe he won't be. And so you get your emotional support out of a being that always loves you and you don't have to work as hard. And so we treat them better because they're easier on us. It's a selfishness in itself. Third and finally, Will, get us into our last point, because I think this is the biggest one that we need to make sure we hit before we get out of here.
Well, what it really boils down to is the dominion mandate, which was given all the way back in Genesis chapter 1. God created humans as the pinnacle of creation. He created mankind. He created animals on the same day, but man was different. Chapter 1, verse 26, let us make man in our image. He didn't say that about the animals. And part of that dominion mandate is that I'll just read verse 26. God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And now, obviously, in our society, we've got PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, that basically say, no, you're on the same level with the animals. And yet, back in the dominion mandate, God makes it very clear, you are, as humans, the pinnacle of your creation. We should not be treating our pet dogs in the exact same way that we should children and human life in general. Human life is the pinnacle. We are called to have dominion. That's really what a lot of this boils down to.
And part of the dominion mandate is to be fruitful and multiply, right? Right in that context. And right after that context, be fruitful and multiply. We're to subdue the earth. We're to have dominion, as you're talking, Will, and as that passage clearly shows. And part of the way we do that is by being fruitful and multiplying. I'm not talking to those who are single and those who are infertile. I'm talking to the people who go, well, I'd rather have my fur babies at home, and they elevate them the same way that they would their kids. And oh, we just, yeah, my dogs are enough for me. Or you hear the grandparents, well, yeah, they're not really having kids because, they got the dogs, and that might be all we get. And it's like, are you serious? You're shirking one of the key commands of man and part of the dominion mandate for us to not only have dominion over the earth. The way we do that is by being fruitful and multiplying, thinking about generationally. We're thinking about the here and now, the selfishness of I've got my dog, he makes me happy, he always comes up and wags his tail, and that's fantastic. Therefore, I'm going to blow off what I would consider to be a key command of God.
Yeah. So I would go out as far as to say, again, not to the single or the infertile, but to those who uh, make this choice, or really just anytime a couple gets married and says, you know what, we don't really want kids. As Christians, that option is really not out there for you. This is a commandment that goes all the way back to our created reason for being here: be fruitful and multiply.
It's one of our purposes, right?
Yeah, it's one of our purposes as humans. And so when a Christian man and a Christian woman get married and decide, no, where this lineage is going to end with us. And then so many times they supplement that with, we'll get dogs instead. Dogs, we can put them in a kennel and go travel the world and Instagram it up. Dogs, we can, not have that long-term commitment, not have the difficulties that come along with that. And so we're seeing more and more of this. And I think as Christians and ministers, people that speak to the word, we need to tell people that's wrong. That is not a choice that God has allowed you to have. Again, to those to which it is a choice. I think that kind of wraps up our points on it. Again, this is something that off the top is probably why pick a fight about this? Why make this an issue? Number one, because it's so just everywhere. Number two, because these things matter, because how we view these things. They aren't kids. They aren't on the same level as kids. They're not a replacement for the design of the family. And we as humans have this dominion over all creation, and to lower ourselves for these creatures that are great and love us unconditionally and all the nice things they bring, it's just an easy out.
And real quick, as Christians, to get back to the value of human life point, in a society that is constantly devaluing human life, we as Christians have a responsibility to do our part to make sure that we voice our value for human life. We're not going to be able to change what everybody else thinks, but if we're just kind of going along with the, talking bad about our kids, man, our dogs are great, but man, our kids are just the worst. We as Christians have to do our part to make sure that we're not adding to this culture of just, again, a devaluing of human life. That would be the only other thing that I would say.
And not just kids, but again, even in that study with adults, they aren't humans. They aren't on any, even if you got the human that has, as Alyssa's grandpa says, 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot on a banana peel, they may be right that, look, they have just as much, like, we, part of the dominion mandate, we have value that nobody else on planet Earth has. Do we accept that? Do we understand that? Do we appreciate what God has given us in putting his spirit, breathing the breath of life into our lungs, not dogs, not cats, not anything else, into our
And don't
lungs?
forget, God brought all the animals to Adam, and none was found as a suitable companion. They are great. They can be man's best friend, but they're not what God intended to fulfill a void that and so yeah, I think we'll wrap it up right there. I think we've said what we feel we need to say. We're probably going to get some disagreement on this. That's okay. Leave a comment. What are your thoughts? Share it if you agree, or even if you don't agree and want to stir up the debate somewhere else. Add to the discussion. Exactly. But we will talk to you guys next week on Think Fast.